right there. I don't know.
It's right. Hey, we are live. I didn't see the spinny thing. Oh, hold on. You're really
That's
small.
because I was pointing and
Oh,
I distracted Doug with my pointing here on the Two Bros Wrestling Show. If you're
what's up,
tuning in,
wrestling
wondering
fans?
what this is, because we don't know what it is. It's been a while since Doug and I have sat together on this. Doug, I appreciate the last time we had a show. You went solo. You and your AI overlords and a bunch of dragons. If y'all didn't check that out, you need to do that.
It's and you know yeah, yeah.
He's like, yeah, I did that.
It didn't really turn out the way I had wanted it to, but it turned out. So done is better than perfect, I guess.
I appreciated it. I think the folks at home appreciated it, but I am happy to be back and actually having a conversation with what I'm presuming is the real Doug here. Well, as real as Doug can get. On the Two Bros Wrestling Show, Doug, tonight, our main event topic is Roman on the ropes. We are going to take a look at the pinfall loss that our tribal chief took the first in 3.5 years, which is obviously significant, but we're going to look at what that might mean for the future of the Bloodline storyline, as well as Roman's historic world title reign. All of that coming up in our main event topic. And of course, as always, we'll end with our performer, our match of the week. So definitely stay tuned for that if it's your first time watching the show. Before we get into any of that stuff, Doug, you remember how we do this, right?
There it is. There
we go.
Opening bell. Let's do this.
We'll start with some news because it has been a while since we've joined the folks, but I alluded to Doug handling the heavy lifting on my behalf while I was off enjoying Bonnaroo. Thank you again, Doug. But you previewed Forbidden Door. Some consequences coming out of Forbidden Door. A lot of our fans may already know this by now, but I wanted to lead with the fact that Bryan Danielson's arm injury is apparently worse than first thought. So he did injure himself during the highly anticipated main event of Forbidden Door with Kazuchika Okada. Still a great match. But if it didn't quite live up to your expectations at home, there might be a reason for that, and it would be the fact that Bryan he wrestled the last 10 minutes with a broken arm.
10 minutes with a broken arm. Come on.
I mean, give it to him for that, because it was still a really good match. The ending did seem a little strange to me at the time. I didn't know what had happened. I don't know what you thought, Doug, when you watched it, but as I was watching it, I'm like, that ended a little quicker and differently than I thought. Apparently, they improvised the whole last bit of it because of the injury.
Yeah, I don't want to say I expected more out of those two, but I did expect more out of those two. And but it's completely understandable now, knowing that he did 10 minutes with a broken freaking arm.
And typically a broken arm, 6 to 8 week recovery period. But however, it's apparent that it's going to be a tad bit longer than that for Bryan. Obviously, 6 to 8 weeks would have taken him out of the upcoming Blood and Guts match, which was going to be Blackpool. Well, I guess still is, but no longer will he be involved in Blackpool Combat Club taking on the Elite at Blood and Guts. Bryan's wife, Bree, had shared images of the break on Instagram, I believe it was, saying how it was way worse than the couple had originally thought. What that means as far as timetable for return, who knows how long it'll be that the American Dragon will be out of action. But get well soon, Bryan, and kudos to you for being way tougher than any of us. So.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be doing this show with a broken arm, much less physical, altercation.
I can't function with a broken finger now, much less an arm.
Hey, Doug, speaking of Blood and Guts, this kind of relates, right? So because of the Bryan injury now, the main event of Blood and Guts is being teased as each team introducing a mystery partner to the whole ordeal. Could that mystery partner for Combat Pool end up being Chris Hero? Someone on Twitter suggested this, and AEW President Tony Khan actually gave an interesting reply saying, I'm chipping away at him. So turns out the 43-year-old Hero, and I didn't know this, he began working as a backstage producer starting with Collision on June 17th. It's sort of a trial basis, but obviously Chris Hero is kind of renowned in the industry as being just well liked, good guy, well respected by the talent. So I have a feeling this whole producer gig's going to work out well for him. Seemed content, I think, to stay behind the scenes. 43 years old at this point, but I don't know. Tony Khan's comments make you think that there's a chance, in at least Tony's mind, to get him back in the ring. So it would be his first match in 3 years. He hadn't stepped between the ropes since NXT UK. If that gives you some idea, it's just how long it's been.
So Kings of Wrestling, was that the?
Oh, they were so Kings of Wrestling was so freaking good. I mean, I can't say I know at 43 it wouldn't be the same, but I was always a big Chris Hero fan. Thought he never got as Cassius Ohno in his NXT days. He never got the rub. But if you go back and watch any of that ROH stuff, him and Claudio, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think the obvious member should be CM Punk. I mean, it writes itself at that point.
But it maybe doesn't just write itself; it probably takes on a life of its own.
Indeed, it does.
And you can't control it any longer. Hey, speaking of scripted wrestling shenanigans, Doug, there's actually a wrestling movie being made here in Kentucky, and I read about this. I'm no joke. I'm seriously trying to convince my wife. I'm like, they're asking for extras. You act. You need to sign up for this. They're in Louisville filming this month. It's an upcoming film about the life of Mildred Burke. The film is based off Jeff Lean's book, Queen of the Ring, and it stars Emily Beth Rickards as Burke. Rickards is, I guess, known. I hadn't watched any of the Arrowverse stuff, but apparently Arrow and The Flash, she was on those shows. But here's your wrestling. It is wrestling content, but here's bonus wrestling content for you, because obviously a lot of wrestling action, a lot of folks that we all would know in our world that we cover here are involved as well. Charlotte Flair has been cast as June Byers, and Liv Morgan is playing the part of Clara Mortensen. Trinity took to her social media this week saying that she had just been cast, didn't say exactly what her role was, but JR is an executive producer on this whole thing. So Burke was, for those who don't know Burke, I would advise you to go watch an episode we did last year of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Actually, it is the most watched to date. It's still the most watched episode we've ever done. We did one for Women's History Month and the history of women's wrestling. And you cannot talk the history of women's wrestling without talking Burke. There's a reason the NWA Women's Championship is referred to as the Burke.
Oh, we need to put that card up here. Is it on this side or is it on your side when we link a card? I can't tell. I always get it wrong. We'll put a card up here. So
do that
to link to that. Yeah, we'll do that.
To be clear, Doug will put a card up there.
Once Kevin uploads this to YouTube, I will go ahead and upload. I don't put a card on it to link back to that for us.
It is a really interesting story. I mean, she came up in the time when women were outright banned by the NWA from competing. She is a member of WWE's Hall of Fame. She was inducted in 2016 in the very first inaugural class of their, what do they call, the legacy wing, when they folks that had came before WWE, or sort of those who've had a historic role in the history of professional wrestling that most fans probably would not know. So trailblazers or something like that they call it. But anyway, she's in there. We covered her and as part of that episode. But also, if you remember, Doug, she was married to the infamous Billy Wolf. Mm-hmm. Who we profiled also during this episode. He was known to groom young, vulnerable women who wanted to be in the business. And that ended up including the fabulous Moolah, who, is charged many years later with having taken after her mentor and done the very same thing. If you look on the IMDb list, I don't see any actors yet maybe associated with, but apparently there are roles of the fabulous Moolah and Mae Young in this as well. Oh, wow. So they were a slight bit behind Mildred, but definitely in that same general time frame. So it should be really cool. But I mean, outside of the wrestlers I mentioned, folks that people might recognize that are involved with this, Walter Goggins is playing a role. Known for Righteous Gemstones and loved him as Boyd Crowder on Justified. Deborah Ann Wall is playing a wrestler. She was on True Blood, and it was in the Marvel. I think Daredevil.
I
recall the TV show. So anyway, just pretty cool. Can't wait for it. So moving from the world of movies to the world of gaming. Can't say I'm the world's biggest gamer, but I definitely am a fan of console gaming, especially wrestling games on console. Ever since my first PlayStation many years ago, one of the first things I make sure and go out and buy is the latest iteration of games. We know AEW forever has promised Fight Forever, and they finally delivered, Doug. After years of teasing it, Fight Forever is out. I know this is a passion project for Kenny Omega. Specifically wanted to bring back the feel of the old arcade style games. I think WWE's No Mercy was kind of the blueprint for that. It's kind of held up as a holy grail of wrestling games from back in the day. You'd think that doing this would garner a huge bit of attention and praise, but Metacritic scores right now sitting at a 65. Early reviews has been a bit middling for Fight Forever. I don't know if you've heard anything or seen anything, but everything I've read makes it sound like they capture a bit of that No Mercy spirit, but some of the animations don't pass muster for present day. And
just what I've seen on YouTube, they're better looking games. They're much better looking games, but I get what they're going for. But
yeah, maybe gameplay is one thing, but if you're going for an old classic video game, you probably should at least update it enough to meet the taste of modern fans as well. Right. And it looks like they might have gone a little too far down that hole of wanting it to be like a game from 20 years ago by looking like a game from 20 years ago.
Exactly. It's like my old ECW game that I had on the PS1.
Yeah, which was great at the time. Yeah, you probably wouldn't be as impressed by it if you bought it new today. But hey, I know we have gamers amongst us watching. So those of you who are actually playing Fight Forever, please drop it in the comments and let us know what you think. Is that an unfair characterization of what Fight Forever is? They worked on it a very long time. So we got to find out what you all think.
Yeah, because I don't think as casual gamers ourselves, we can really, chime in on this one, because to me, it just doesn't look good. And I hate to say that. I would
play it if given to me. I don't see myself running out and getting it. There's nothing about it that goes, oh, and there was a time I thought, man, I can't wait for an AEW video game.
Yes.
And don't have that feel for it.
Yeah.
Here we are. Doug, the Observer is reporting that WWE is considering taking NXT TV outside of the Performance Center, having house shows outside of the current Florida loop. This would be more in line with kind of what the brand evolved to back in the old black and gold days. Yep. So I'm totally supportive of this. Hope it happens.
Absolutely. I would love to see that. Love to see it.
I think that would be really obviously, I think it worked in the black and gold days, but I do think that for the young folks that are coming through the Performance Center to perform in different environments in front of different crowds instead of a lot of the same people every week, I think that helps in their development too, because you won't feel as lost when you get called up and suddenly like everyone's not in your back pocket because it's not the same diehards showing up every
week. Yeah, you don't have the same like 30 people that are there every week in and out, with the tourists sprinkled in throughout the crowd. But yeah,
hey, I'm not judging those people. If we were in Orlando, we would be there.
Absolutely
more weeks than not. Speaking of TV programming, VIX, or I'm guessing it's VIX, maybe it's VIX, but VIX, I'll say, and All Elite are tag teaming on bringing AEW's weekly programming to subscribers in Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So this is a huge market, obviously, a huge Hispanic and Latino market, obviously, that AEW was not previously reaching. So beginning this past week, starting with Dynamite, VIX or VIX Premium plan allows all of their subscribers access to Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision from here on moving forward. So good move and bringing a more global feel to their product, especially if they go touring places. You want TV there, right?
Yes, so true.
Malachi Black made some interesting comments this week in an interview on Bobby Fish's podcast. Malachi's always making interesting comments. But during the show, Black revealed that he had requested to be on Collision and Collision only. So I had to read this, and when you read the reason rationale, it's not as shocking as that headline sounds.
I know the headline drags you in, and you're like, wait, what? And then you're like, okay, it makes perfect sense. I actually love the reasoning. It's very great reasoning,
and it lends credence to the notion of why a actual brand split could be beneficial, and he spelled it right out. He said that, and his quotes was, "The polish comes off of the House of Black act if you think you could just see them whenever." But instead of wondering if it's Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, if we can only see House of Black on Saturday, it makes it more destination TV and makes it more important. I agree with that.
I love that. Yeah, I do too. I really like that reasoning, because when I read the headline, I was like, oh, great. What kind of heat does he have with the Elite?
Same thing. Same thing I thought. And then you read it and you go, no, that makes a lot of sense. But now there's no indication as to whether or not that request is granted or going to be granted. But interesting take nonetheless. And who knows, maybe down the road, more folks feeling that way internally might lead to a more, not a soft, but a more commonly acknowledged brand split.
Yeah.
Congrats to Alex Kane. So last night during MLW's Never Say Never pay-per-view, Kane became world champion by putting an end to the more than 600-day reign of Alex Hammerstone. It was also revealed prior to the match, because they've been teasing it, who's been backing the Boomaye Fight Club. And it turns out the answer was surprising. Don King. Yes, that Don King, the 91-year-old Don King, made a surprise appearance into the world of wrestling last night. But, kudos for getting a big name like Don King, I suppose. But it should also be kudos because Alexander Hamilton not only held the title for more than 600 days, his reign began by beating Jacob Fatu, who at that point had held the world title for more than 800 days. So MLW is definitely showing the others how to book their world champion with restraint. That's 2 world champions in about 5.5, 6 years time. That makes your reign mean more when guys hold belts for 600, 700, 800 days, as we will get into in our main event topic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just a couple of quick stories to end on, Doug. One is wrestling adjacent, but I still feel compelled to talk about it now that WWE and UFC exist as one company, essentially. This first sounded like a joke and then maybe a social media ploy, but apparently a cage match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg is looking like it's actually heading towards a real physical combat contest. The two tech billionaires have been feuding for a while publicly. Their advisors have been reportedly negotiating behind the scenes with UFC and Dana White on actually making this a fight for charity of some sort. So in an interview, White actually said he talks to the two separately just about every night and that they both want to do this. Doug, would you pony up for Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg in the cage?
I absolutely would love to see that. Although Elon's pretty thick and Zuck is not really a big guy. It's like, I don't know. I want to say Rikishi versus maybe like Zack Sabre Jr. kind of a size difference there. I don't know, man.
If Zuck can tie folks up the way that Zack can, maybe still going for him. But at first I thought that has got to be some ridiculous clickbait. And then, no, apparently there's legs to this. It might be a thing.
I love that. I want to see it. Maybe we can get that for SummerSlam.
Oh, wow. We will keep you informed. And finally, we posted this on our Facebook page while we've been on our brief hiatus here, but I didn't want to move on with, our main event topic and the fun we'll have in the fictional world of wrestling. We lost Darren Drozdov during our break. He was only 54 years old, and the Drozdov family issued a statement on his death, said it occurred from natural causes. If you are a younger viewer of the Two Bros Wrestling Show who may not remember Draws, he was a talented athlete, a legit athlete, spent a couple of years, 3, in fact, in the NFL prior to turning to the world of pro wrestling. Sadly, Draws was injured in October of 1999 during a match with D'Lo Brown, probably the worst in-ring accident of the modern era. Draws suffered 2 broken vertebrae, which left him a quadriplegic for the remainder of his life. So in that statement the family issued, they thanked WWE for the constant support and care of Darren during the past 24 years of his life. So I'm presuming that the company did the right thing by way of the family and made sure that they did not want for anything. But still, natural causes or not, you just have to think that, you know, the last 24 years and the situation that he found himself in did not lead to a long life for what to me is still a young man. So rest in peace, Draws. Very sad story all the way around, and has been for some time, but peace to the family. And with that bit of seriousness out of the way, let's transition to the silly.
Let's get silly. I'm feeling a little oozy, Kevin.
You feeling a little oozy?
I'm feeling a little oozy after things have transpired the way they have in the past couple of weeks in WWE land.
I mean, it's been kind of all downhill for Roman ever since WrestleMania and coming out on top, which at the time was a surprise to many. Maybe it shouldn't have been. Just first, the facts. When Roman took the pinfall at Money in the Bank last weekend during that main event, it was the first time his shoulders have been on the mat for a 3 count since December of 2019. So that's more than 3.5 years. Doug, I thought the Bloodline might lose to the Usos, but I was worried they'd do that half step thing and let Solo take the pin.
As did I. I legit expected Solo to take the pin.
Because Roman doesn't take pins, right?
Right. He hasn't been. He is the tribal chief. He has been not pinned for what, 3 years?
3.5. 3.5. Obviously, the way they went about it advances that storyline faster.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't surprised the Usos won, but I did think that it was a possibility. Obviously, you did as well. It's amazing to me, and I don't know what you think, but it's amazing to me how big that moment felt, because if we look at it, it's a tag match in a main event. So nothing really changes for Roman other than the storyline advancing, yet it still felt more like, it felt like a big match, like somebody, like a big title was changing hands that we didn't think was going to change hands or hadn't changed hands in some time. And really, in the grand scheme, if you look at it just logically, nothing really changed for Roman. That's what happens when you make it feel important and keep those pinfalls to the minimum.
Absolutely, because nothing really changed for Roman, and not to take away from that victory and that pinfall, but you know, if you're looking at it in the macro instead of the micro, you know, Roman, it took 2 dudes still to defeat Roman to get that pinfall. You know, super kicks after super kicks after super kicks. You know, the brothers double teaming a lot. You know, so it's still like has that boss fight. You know, going back to our gaming we're talking about earlier, it has that boss fight to it, because you know, the heroes against the big bad villain is what we eventually got there. You take out the minion first, and then there's the boss fight at the end. And that's kind of what
was a boss fight.
Absolutely.
And it felt momentous. Even though no titles were on the line, it felt like something had changed.
And Heyman's look when Jay pins him, man.
Well, Heyman is a master at both the subtle and the not so subtle. He is usually over the top with those facial expressions so that the guy in the back row knows how Paul's feeling, but he still does it so well. Whenever the camera catches him, it never catches him off guard. He's doing something to enhance what's happening in the middle of the ring.
Absolutely. I mean, because we've talked about it before, it's a team sport. You know, you got both guys in the ring, maybe 4, maybe 6 guys in the ring. You've got your managers, you got the announcers, everybody's working together to tell this story, and everybody did a great job on that Saturday night.
Well, let's break that down a little bit. I agree with you. It did take everybody to make that happen the way that it did and feel as big as it did. But looking at those moving parts and those individual parts, do you think the rationale for having Jay pick up the fall on Roman was key? Would it have meant as much had it been Jimmy? Would it mean the same thing? Were we having the same momentous feel conversation if it had been Jimmy that had done it? Or does it mean more that it fell on Jay?
I think, oh, smack my mic. I think it would have worked if either had done it, but it means more, at least to this old Mark, it means more that Jay got that pin. I
agree.
We got main event Jay Uso getting that pin over. Yeah, it just works so much better with Jay getting the pin. I mean, nothing against Jimmy. It would have been just a huge of a pop if Jimmy had got it, but in the grand scheme and in the storyline of things, and Bloodline, you know, all those guys are excellent wrestlers, but they're even better storytellers at this point in their careers. I think, so much of the acting that they do, the facial expressions, just nuances, their body language at times, it just meant more for Jay.
I think the people would have popped the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then after you sat down and thought about it the way that I have when preparing for this show, you realize that for the storyline moving forward, and that's part of what we're talking about here, what does this pinfall mean? Where is this taking this Bloodline storyline to maybe its conclusion? It definitely works easier by it being Jay, because he is main event Jay Uso. Who made him that? Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
This plays into that history better than it would have had it been Jimmy. Not
Absolutely.
just the history of Jay and Roman, because this whole Bloodline thing really started with Jay questioning Roman, and then finally succumbing and coming under his cousin,
falling into line.
Yeah, because I keep threatening your brother, and so eventually, all right, I'll join you. Just leave him alone, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where this started. And Doug, I didn't really know this, but playing into history, and I imagine as this moves forward, they're going to bring this in even more. But you talk about full circle and going really long view. Prior to Bloodline and any of this, Jay apparently was the very first person to pin Roman Reigns when Roman first joined the main roster years ago.
Really?
Yes. And I'm like, there's no way that fact is going to be overlooked in this moving forward. There's got to be old footage of the young Roman Reigns coming up with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. And I'm guessing that, at some point, the Usos, Jay was the first one to probably get that pin on Roman. So a lot of history here. It definitely means more by being Jay. I think that one thing that is lost in this, and maybe it's a good thing that it's lost, is 3.5 years, obviously a long time, and it is great to show that kind of restraint, and that's why it means something. But the last man to pin, okay, I see why exactly, right? Mm-hmm. You're scratching your head here, because December 2019, Doug, who was that man?
Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin.
Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
So there's you probably won't play that up too much. I looked into it, thought this was interesting. The last 4 men, apparently 2019 was like, we're just so used now that Roman Reigns has that
pinned?
Yeah. Doesn't get pinned. 2019 was a bit of a rough year. The last 4 men to pin Roman Reigns: Baron Corbin, the very last to do it. Before that, it was Bobby Lashley. Okay. Eric Rowan is in there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That I know. Some of this doesn't confuse. And Shane McMahon got the pin. I know, right? Shane got a pinfall at one of those Saudi events back in 2019. So those are the last 4 men to do what Jey Uso did. Obviously, what Jey Uso did is going to mean a heck of a lot more than it did for Rowan, McMahon, and Baron Corbin. Bobby Lashley is the exception there. That one I can buy. Jay's the man, though. Jay's the one who gets that rub, and this might actually make for main event Jey Uso, like for real. I know the Usos are seen more obviously as a unit.
Right.
It does look like we're going to get Jay challenge. I mean, that's the next chapter, right? Jay challenging at SummerSlam.
Absolutely.
Do you think, Doug, that this next chapter is Jay challenging Roman for the title, or Jay challenging Roman for who is the tribal chief, or both?
I think that's interesting, because if Jay challenges for both, which I almost said, yeah, Jay's going to challenge for both, but and it's a done deal. But if Jay challenges for both, that's a very interesting dynamic that happens because I have my own. I've already booked this in my head, and I have a very solid idea of who wins when Jay and Roman do go at it. But there's a very interesting dynamic there. Then in the aftermath of that, if Jay challenges for both, you know, you want this, all right, you want this belt, you want this lei that looks like a whole bunch of chili peppers or whatever it is. Then
And you can see the way Solo was looking at those chili peppers. That delay means a lot to that family,
it
apparently.
sure does. But then there's going to be the aftermath of that. Regardless, no spoilers here for me about who I think, but regardless of who comes out on top of that match, it continues to propel the bloodline forward because we're not done with the bloodline.
That was where I was going to ask next. Is like, do you see that if they make it a can you string it out longer if you say, hey, the title's not important, I want that seat, and do you do them one thing at a time, or is it okay to go ahead and challenge for both the title and the seat at the table?
These are things I really haven't thought about. But now that we're talking about them, maybe you do the title's not even important. The thing is that string of chili peppers. I'm not even sure what that lei is made out of, but to me it looks like chili peppers.
We'll say chili peppers. It's funnier.
But yeah, it could be a story that unfolds like that. You do especially with what happened on SmackDown this past week, where almost called him Homer for some reason. I don't know where that was coming from. Where Roman gives up the chili peppers temporarily. Oh, I don't know what I'm talking
Homer
about.
Reigns.
Homer Reigns gives up his chili peppers for a brief time, maybe what, a minute before a low blow, and then the complete turn. But yeah,
great.
Solo, I really love Solo looking at the lei too and going, well,
I mean, there's definitely some nuance you could throw in this and keep pulling it out, but I don't know. There's part of it that's like, if this was May, sure, but it's not. It's July. SummerSlam's coming up, so you got to go big at SummerSlam. So I presume it'll be for both the title and the who gets to lead the family, just because there's not that sort of mid-tier pay-per-view that can get you halfway to the big one at SummerSlam. But
yeah,
let's look at this way. We've been in this spot before. Not every challenger in Roman's historic title reign has been a legit threat, and that is no offense to the great KO or Drew McIntyre. But however, there's been several times where it seemed that there was a poetic end to this insight, whether that was Sammy's overwhelming grassroots support or the whole Cody Rhodes finishing the storyline. Eventually the pundits are going to be right. Time moves on. Eventually Roman's going to lose this title. Do you think that Jay dethroning his cousin and taking over the bloodline seems like that poetic end on the second largest stage that WWE has, since it didn't happen at Mania? We didn't get the dream match of Roman Rocket Mania. This is about as big as it gets, other than Mania. When you talk SummerSlam, is the actual story not Sammy's story, not Cody's story, but Jey Uso taking over the bloodline?
It's not Sammy, it's not Cody, although Cody, I believe, still has a story to finish. It's not Jay either. What we're going to see is this is still Roman's story, right? WWE is going to give us what they've always wanted to force on us, but they had to make him a heel, a very, very successful heel to do this. Maybe Jay does dethrone the cousin, but every great villain needs a redemption arc, and we will see a redemption arc before there is a Roman Reigns exit to Hollywood from WWE to Hollywood. We're gonna see that redemption arc play out, and Roman Reigns will have his Darth Vader repentant moment where there is that redemption arc that he goes through, and is a white bread babyface again when all is said and done. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but it will happen. Maybe the tribal chief goes away for a little while if Jay were to dethrone him. I don't know, but that story's not over yet.
Here.
Yeah.
Let's talk spoilers. Do you give any, I know we have been in this, we fooled ourselves before, but do you give Jay any chance of winning the world title at SummerSlam? If in fact that is the stipulation, does he? We'll look at both scenarios, but do you actually think that it's likely to happen, or do you think that Roman wriggles off the out of the noose once again?
See, I think much like Roman actually getting pinned by Jay went back and forth, kind of like we're talking about right here, right now. I feel almost like we're in a writer's room with WWE because there's a lot of moving parts to still address. And, they went back and forth with Roman actually taking the pin, which apparently, at least half of the creative and higher ups thought was a bad idea. I'm curious to who campaigned for it and who thought it was a bad idea. At the end of the day, I think it worked perfectly. I don't think Jay is the man to dethrone Roman at all. I don't know who that's. Well, I've got my thoughts on that too, because somebody.
We'll get into that. I'm going to ask you later.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't want to say it's Jay. It's not Jay's time. My God, it's been Jay's time for years now. Just like it's been Roman's and Jimmy's, and then when they bring Solo up, it was even Sammy's time for a while. So these guys are riding high in this story. Everybody is getting elevated. This is one of those rising tides lifts all boats kind of situations for everybody, even loosely associated with this group. I just don't think it's not the time to end that just yet, and it's not Jay's time to end that.
I know that Jay is main event Jay Uso, but he's not Sammy or definitely not Cody in terms of being viewed as a main event singles wrestler, main event tag wrestler for sure. But obviously that changes if he can get past Roman Reigns. You make a man overnight, and that's kind of what this whole thing has been about anyway, right? Why else would you keep a belt on a man for 3 years, if not to not only make that title mean something, but to eventually elevate that person to the next level? Maybe Cody didn't need it. I think that maybe Sammy could be argued probably could have to be seen as a legit getting to that next level main event top tier guy. Definitely Jay would be made overnight as a singles wrestler should he manage to win the world title from Roman.
Yeah. Just thinking wrestling logic, right? Somebody who's going to take Roman out has got to have some cred, right? Not saying that Jay does not have the cred, but if you put Jay one-on-one with Brock Lesnar, right? Put them in a ring together. Is Jay going to be able to beat Brock? Is that going to be booked that way?
You wouldn't think so, no.
You wouldn't think so. And it did take 2 Usos. Like I said earlier, it was like a boss fight. The entire team is going after the big boss after they take the minions, Solo in this case, out of the equation. It takes both Usos to get the man down so that Jay can get the pin and get the 3
You're
count,
definitely
right?
leaning on the side that it's SummerSlam or not, that Roman's going over. So if Roman does go over, let's look at that scenario first. Roman wins, let's do this in reverse. I'll save that for last because I honestly think that is the more likely. Let's go the more unlikely. Jay wins. Do you think Roman immediately takes some time off before coming back as sort of a reset, starting a new storyline or maybe a next chapter of the Bloodline storyline? Or do we immediately go into Roman trying to get used to the new dynamic of being number 2? Paul switching sides because he's a little rat and like he's going to whoever has the most stroke at the time. Like, do you see that just immediately following in, or do you think that it's about time for Roman to take a break? Because he's already on that part-time schedule. He's got to be, with his health history, his age, everything else. He's got to at least be already looking at that John Cena, Brock Lesnar schedule
Mm-hmm.
of I'm not going to be the guy for too much longer, surely.
Right.
So if Jay wins, is that the start of Roman as a true part timer and not a world title threat?
I still think he needs a redemption arc. You know, either he gets beat and goes away. I think that two scenarios here. He gets beat and goes away, which I don't think Jay's the guy to do that.
Yeah.
You know, or he gets beat and he tries, like you say, he tries to work the new power dynamic and adjust to it. Then you have the story where Jay slowly goes heel. Jay, the power goes to Jay's head, right? Jay starts to bring the family in line, realizes all the pressure that Roman was under, and doing the things that Roman wanted to do or was doing just because he had to do them. And then you start to see Roman's redemption arc then. But
so you think definitely at some point Roman's got to be leaving this, at least the more consistently featured version of Roman Reigns. He's got to leave that part of his in-ring career as a face.
Yes,
finally accepted as the face that WWE couldn't get us to buy into.
Exactly.
I think fans would. I think fans love hating Roman to the point that they would react positively now to a face Roman Reigns if they do it right.
Absolutely, it has to be done right, and you have 3.5 years of this to work with now to finally give the man his redemption arc. And
well, 3.5 years. 3.5 years. How much longer can it go? Like, does the Bloodline storyline continue after Roman walks away, or is it just like the Usos and so I guess it's still there's Bloodline there. Does it require Roman to be present to be a continuation of this story?
The Bloodline does need a tribal chief.
It's just who that is.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody else in that group can carry the Bloodline as a tribal chief. Again, nothing against the Usos. They are great tag team wrestlers. I never think of them as singles wrestlers.
I don't either. Even when one was hurt and Jay was having to do, he did a great job. But I still was waiting for his brother to come back and see them as a unit.
And Solo is still
green.
Yeah. Doesn't when he talk? I love that when he doesn't talk or talk.
There's two reasons for that. One,
right.
Yeah, it's tough, and otherwise you have to hear him talk, and maybe that's not the best.
Exactly.
Character.
So I mean, you can't have a silent tribal chief. So
it's the second scenario being the one that we both are saying is probably going to happen, SummerSlam or not, and that's Roman winning. Is that the end of the insurrection part of the Bloodline storyline? If Roman comes out, hey, this is it. Roman's come out on top. And if that is the way it goes, if it's not Jay, I know we've looked at this crystal ball before. There was a time where it seemed like, okay, it's been a while. WWE normally doesn't show this kind of restraint. Brock seemed like a legit threat. Sammy actually ended up for a while. We thought maybe that underdog story makes him a legit threat. Cody really seemed like it could be the guy because of the elevated stage. Mm-hmm. We neither one think it's Jay, and we neither one think it's SummerSlam. Reports are that right now writers are still leaning towards a WrestleMania main event next year of Cody versus Brock or Cody versus Roman. Mm-hmm. Do you think that if he makes it through SummerSlam, Roman carries this title all the way to WrestleMania next year?
I do, and I think everything is leaning towards Cody finally finishing his story, but Cody has to do a few things. I think it was on a podcast with Road Dogg where he was talking about Cody really hadn't done anything yet, right? And that's why I was talking about Lesnar earlier. Cody's got to establish himself. For the casual WWE fan, Cody left to Stardust 6 years ago, and came back looking like Homelander. So. Cody has, the Rhodes name. He's got, he's Cody Rhodes, but what's he really done in WWE? Let's set him up some obstacles to overcome on his road to actually finishing that story. And
I think he had that story and that momentum going, winning the Royal Rumble, having those classic matches with Seth, and then the injury
stopped
that. and it was hard to come back with just a brief amount of a month or so and pick up right where he left off, especially when by that time the fans wanted Sammy. It was almost like starting over for Cody.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
He's kind of got that reset, and you think I think, you know, if you look at, if we've been here before, I know, if not Brock, then who? We didn't see Sammy coming.
Right.
We didn't, you know, Cody comes back and I'm thinking, yes, maybe. Other than Cody, I don't see anyone right now at the level that anyone is currently at, unless they do a lot of work at making somebody a really big deal in a short amount of time. I don't see it being Jay, but I also don't see it being anyone else in the WWE broader roster right now, other than Cody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where we are, because Cody still has a story to finish, and Roman. If Cody defeats Roman, that's a big deal, especially if Cody defeats Roman at SummerSlam. Then Roman can go away. You know, that allows him to exit and then become that part timer. Maybe at some point in the future, then he returns to save the bloodline from something, and bada bing, bada boom, we got babyface Roman Reigns showing up here and there. Maybe that's how that works out. Yeah.
I think we're kind of in agreement here that while the pinfall was significant, felt significant, and marks a change in the direction of the bloodline storyline, it's far from the beginning of the end for Roman Reigns, that there's still more work to do, and this doesn't conclude at SummerSlam, even though it appears all headed through SummerSlam. Roman's not done with that title or that seat just yet.
No, not yet.
And with that, fans, that's the look at Roman on the ropes. We're like, yeah, maybe, but he's not down. He's on the ropes, but
he's not down. He's not down. He's there's a reason he's the tribal chief. You know, tribal chief's got a lot on his shoulders.
It'd be one thing if we were all tired of the storyline, and if you're tired of the storyline, you can let us know in the comments.
If you're tired of the storyline, you're just wrong. Let me just say that right now. You're just wrong. It's great.
I can't imagine many wrestling fans are. I don't hear anyone saying that they can't wait for this to end and go on to the next thing. It's you know, every incremental step in this journey has been entertaining. There's no reason to think that it won't continue. I would love to be surprised by something at SummerSlam, but if it goes the way we think it's going to go, I can't say I'm going to be disappointed. I'm sure it'll be entertaining getting there.
Agreed.
So with that, let's talk some big finish material, because we haven't done one of these in a while.
Let's do it. I got notes.
Notes. I love a man with the notes.
It's not as robust to say your notes, but I do have notes.
How do you know I have notes? I have nothing in my hand.
Oh, sorry. Did I just break kayfabe with us?
It's all right. It's quite all right. Let's talk botch of the week.
You want to go first? You want me to go? Who's going first?
You go ahead.
Okay. You know, for those who are just watching the show for the first time, I'm a bit of an AEW fan. I know, shocking. But man, I gotta say, I'm just downright annoyed, and I gotta call this out as a botch, because I am having such a hard time keeping up with who is in what tournament. How many tournaments are going on right now? I don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm a confused old man most of the time anyway. Don't throw 15 different tournaments at me, all named the Owen Hart something. I'm so confused right now, and I got to call this out as a botch. Why not? Why are all these things going on? Is it because they're in Canada? I don't know what's happening.
I can maybe understand that there's a women's side of a bracket and a man's side of the bracket to the Owen Hart thing, but I don't think it's after Owen Hart, but they do have a tag team tournament going on at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's
I've got them all confused, because there's the wild card tag team where, you know, you and I are teaming together, I think, next week.
Okay. Since you brought that up, I didn't have it as my botch. I thought about it, but I don't like that format. Like, I understand that you could occasionally get some good storylines out of the whole, like, hey, they don't like each other, but look, they're tag team partners and they happen to win a title. But when every match in the tournament is guys that are just randomly drawn, like, how is that a legit, like, tag team division that you have it's a slight on them that everybody is just mixed match tag teams.
And how many of these tag teams are like, oh look, Keith Lee and Swerve got randomly chosen, and then there's MJF and Adam Cole are randomly in a tag team. What are the odds? No, stop! You're insulting me, and you're confusing me. Just stop
100% agree. I don't care for that either. I think it's definitely too much happening all at once, which can sometimes be Tony's frantic style.
Well, we've seen the dude live, and he is wired, man. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think I slept a lot. That dude clearly does not.
No, he does not. My botch, Doug, comes from not from AEW, but I gave some praise in our opening news segment to NXT for considering going back on the road. So to be fair and balanced, I must also call them out as well. I, for the most part, think that the creative team at NXT, Shawn Michaels in particular, have done a great job to bounce back to that sort of old spirit of NXT in there. But while you're bouncing back to the older things, why, oh, why would you decide to resurrect that god-awful Raw Underground concept, which is what they did, and they brought it to NXT this week. In fairness, the NXT Underground match between Eddie Thorpe and Damian Kemp was probably the best one of these they ever had. That still doesn't mean we need more of them. There's so much awful baggage associated with Raw Underground. Next thing you know, we'll be having NXT Punjabi prison match or NXT Kennel from Hell matches. No, bad ideas are bad ideas. We don't need them.
Yeah, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
No, and they did.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Doug, your performer.
I think I've heaped a lot of praise on him through our main event, but I've got to call out, Jey Uso. Not for his pin on Roman at Money in the Bank, but more so for the nuanced. And I don't think you get a lot of like subtle and nuanced acting from professional wrestling, or it's not the first thing you're thinking of when I say professional wrestling, but the way he acts in the ring, not carrying himself as like, the main event Jey Uso, but when Roman first comes out and everybody's in the ring together, there's a bit of deference to Roman. The body language actually changes with Roman in the ring. It's almost like he's intimidated by him, but he's still trying to fight through it because he has something, even after he's pinned him, he's working this. And then of course, by the very, very end of SmackDown, it's a completely different man who's, his brother's been beat down again by his other brother and his cousin, and he is there for revenge at that point. I mean, so kudos to Jey.
Man, kudos. Yeah, Jey just obviously being the one that gets the pinfall, moving into that next chapter of this story. Yeah, you're putting a lot on a man who isn't typically a singles star, but everything about this is star-making performance. And should they decide to go their separate directions for a while, whether he wins the title or not, this is making Jey, and he is every bit living up to the expectations being put on him in this role. Just for us to even be having this conversation about him in a world title scenario at SummerSlam is a victory as to how much over he has gotten as a supposed threat to his cousin. Jey can't argue against that. I'm going to go with someone else just because since you've called out Jey, I want to give some shine to another member actually of WWE's roster who is overdue and something that we haven't called out yet, but I'm giving my performer of the week to LA Knight. You talk about victory in defeat. No, he didn't win the Money in the Bank ladder match, which a lot of pundits, myself included, expected. Yep. But still, you talk about a guy who was the most over guy who wasn't in that main event, who isn't a threat to the tribal table. LA Knight was over with that crowd. LA Knight has been over with every crowd. LA Knight got himself over when no one in the WWE writers room saw anything in LA Knight. In interviews, he's basically said that he was given that awful manager's role and for the Maximum Male models. He didn't call Vince out by name, but he definitely said creative did not see me as an in-ring performer. At the time that decision was made, there was only one person that made a difference in creative, and that was Vince McMahon. So LA Knight's also pretty candid on the mic and interviews. He's made mention to the fact that once people found out what his age was, that began to be the whispers behind the scenes of, yeah, he's this, that, and the other. But, he's also 42, 43, whatever he is. And that was being held against him. The fans don't care. We do not care about any of that. We just care about the fact that the man is great in the ring, fantastic on the mic, incredibly charismatic, and even in defeat, in an environment that it's hard to do so nowadays, LA Knight has got himself over and is going to stay over. And rumors are they're trying to come up with something big for him for SummerSlam because they realize that they have something here in him. Kudos to LA Knight for just working hard and staying true to himself and getting himself over like he has.
Absolutely. No disagreement for me there.
Love that, man. I loved him back in Impact, and NXT was great, but I just thought he'll never make it on the main roster. And for the longest time, they were proving me right, just in the way that they were booking him. So I've never been happier to be wrong.
Yeah.
Match of the week, Doug. What should the people go watch?
So I was thinking about our show this weekend, and I really wanted to come to you and talk to you, even though that CM Punk has fallen down my ranking since that media scrum and all that nonsense. I really wanted to come in and talk about what an amazing match Joe versus CM Punk what actually was. I can't do that though. I can't do that because a match that was on before that just blew me away.
Yeah.
The closest I have to a Bullet Club Gold shirt, I have a Golden Elite shirt, which I probably should have worn for this, but Bullet Club Gold FTR, my goodness, such a great match, start to finish. It just winds up and it just keeps going and going and going. We know FTR is great. If you remember Juice Robinson when he was, CJ Parker back in NXT days, you kind of see why he asked for his release and actually went to Japan. The first time I see Juice Robinson, it's in a match against Switchblade Jay White, before Switchblade Jay White was anywhere near Bullet Club. I think he was still a member of Chaos then. They have a match at the Cow Palace, and I'm like, my God, both of these guys are great. They are going places. And they're going places. And FTR, it was just a great match, man. Great match. Loved it. Go out of your way to watch that one on Collision.
For sure. I'm gonna go heel here and cheat.
Okay.
Watch me here. I'm gonna get you 3 matches in one answer.
Oh, okay.
So we haven't been on in a while. So if I'm stretching it and saying instead of going back a week, I go back 8 days instead. The Bloodline Civil War probably is the most entertaining match. It was well executed for all the reasons you mentioned earlier with giving Jay your performer of the week. But honestly, if we just looked at pure match excitement and execution and go back a week plus a day, that women's Money in the Bank ladder match was fantastic. It was exciting, had a lot of spots that are memorable. It crowned the right person and furthered a storyline with Io Sky and Bayley. I loved everything about the execution of that match.
Yeah.
So I'm mentioning the Bloodline Civil War match, but call out to those women who really stole the show, in my opinion, for Money in the Bank. But if you hold me to the last 7 days, heck yeah. FTR versus Jay White and Juice Robinson all day long, man. That match was exciting for free television on a Saturday night.
Exactly. I mean,
so good.
And I do love Joe, and just a special shout out the dude in the Collision audience who had the sign that said Samoa Joe is my tribal chief. Kudos to you, dude. You are awesome. You were awesome.
Was good. I saw that.
I too would acknowledge Samoa Joe as the tribal chief. Yes, absolutely.
entertaining stuff all the way around. You can't go wrong with any of those options, but definitely make sure you catch last night's Collision if you didn't. That match in particular, they did do a good job of making that main event feel like a big deal with all the historic footage and 18 years back. They told a great story there too, so it was a great episode of Collision. That's really a good segue though for us, Doug, because guess what?
What are we talking about next week, Kevin?
Next week's been 1 month since AEW Collision has debuted. We have opinions about it. You probably do too. I know it's only a month, but we're going to give you our hot takes on what we like about the show, what we don't like about the show, what we think can actually be fixed about the show to make it even better. You have your opinions. Please come bring them next week. We'll be back Sunday at 8 Eastern time, live here on Facebook. And then wherever you catch us on demand, we will be there waiting on you to talk AEW Collision. Doug?
Go watch some wrestling.
I'll see you next week.
See you, folks. Thanks for watching.